What's happening, people? I'm what you need. You're watching my channel. If you like what you're seeing, you can subscribe, share, donate via Western Union to my channel. I'm just going to talk boxing with you guys. As you know, we always talk boxing. And I want to talk about a couple of fights that expired over the weekend. We'll start off with Shusuke Wrong V-Side versus Amnat Wrong. Actually, it's how his name is pronounced. And in that fight, what happened was I was quite intrigued. You know, Wrong. I'm that. He's 40 years old, and Wrong Visai. I, I recall this very important detail that a lot of people forget. Wrong Visai doesn't really see. He didn't have much of an amateur background, and he doesn't really deal with boxers very well. He's the kind of fighter that fights mid range to inside. So he's not really, very good at fighting boxers. And I'm not wrong. At 40 years of age, he was check hooking him. He was landing lead rights, um, counter rights. I'm not wrong for 40 years of age and how he boxes, unless his boxing is not running. Phenomenal. Phenomenal for 40 years of age. He did very, very well. And to be honest with you, I think that Wrong actually won that fight. If I was going to be absolutely honest. Now, Wrong V-Side came on. He came on somewhere, came on kind of late. Came on, I think he took round 7, 8, 9. I thought Wrong actually took round 10. So I had it 7 rounds to 3 for Wrong. Now they gave Wrong V-Side the fight. Um, what can I say? There was a clash of heads with some blood, but Wrong was outboxing him clear for the first 5 rounds. The 6th round, later on in the round, Wrong V-Side started to get some success as Wrong was kind of slowing down a little bit. And then he intensified a bit. Round 7, 8, and 9, he was the more active fighter. He wasn't the most accurate, but he was the more active, and he was going to the body pretty well. I thought that Wrong took round 10, but even if you argue he took round 10, I still 4 rounds to 6. So Wrong I thought won the fight, but they gave Wrong Visa obviously because he's the younger fighter, etc. Of course, Wrong Visa coming up from super flyweight to bantamweight. Wrong I think he was bigger than bantamweight. He put on some size in his mid region, but he basically handled Wrong Visa pretty well. Again, Wrong Visa coming up in weight, so he had to deal with that. And Wrong was the person who was fighting at the higher weight. But Wrong's a good boxer. He really is a very good boxer. At the age of 40, he performed phenomenally. You know, I've been hearing people talk about how Wrong V-Side, he's lackluster or whatever, he's slow, whatever. I don't see that. I see that Wrong V-Side has a style that, you know, works for when you are within a certain range. It works for us when you're within a certain range. It doesn't work for beyond that. I did watch pieces of Tremaine Williams versus Angelo Leo. Angelo Leo actually started going to the body religiously, somewhere around mid round 2, round 3, and then onwards, right? Um, at first, Tremaine Hawkins kept on landing that lead left on, because he's southpaw, on Angelo Leo. But Angelo Leo, he was also throwing his lead right. Well, he's falling short with the lead right at times. He would sometimes shift his position and slide to the inside. But most of his work was done on the inside and was mostly body work. One of the funny things about the fight to me was that um, Tremaine Williams, you know, he would go to Angela Leo's body, and some people were saying, the blows were low. I didn't see them being low; they were borderline shots, but definitely, Angela Leo caught Tremaine Williams with a low blow, and then Tremaine Williams returned that favor to Angela Leo a little bit later on in the fight, the low blow. But for the most part, Angelo Leo did a great job of breaking down Jermaine Williams. Of course, Jermaine Williams was not really supposed to face Angelo Leo, so that was kind of like a last minute change. He tried to make the adjustments to this new opponent, new competitor. I don't think Jermaine Williams was quite ready for a championship fight. It sort of came on a moment's notice, so he wasn't. I don't think he was ready for a championship fight. But he did perform pretty well for last minute notice. People say, well, he was training for another guy, so he was in shape. But it's a difference when you have to deal with somebody who has a different style. You can kind of get your mind around it a little bit. But in this case, he was last minute replacing. The thing that really gets me is thinking about what if Angelo Leo had to face Stephen Fulton. Stephen Fulton's a different kettle of fish. He's sharper than Jermaine. He's smarter than Jermaine. He knows how to. He has better defense than Jermaine. So I would have loved to seen that matchup. But of course, Stephen Fulton actually did get COVID-19. He and his coach and was treating it. So they're supposed to rematch each other somewhere within 180 days, which is half the year or 6 months. So we'll see how that all pans out. And looking forward to Angelo Leo facing as now new featherweight champion, WBO featherweight champion Angelo Leo, seeing him face Stephen Fulton, because I think that Stephen Fulton is the goods. And I was listening to, I think it was the Boxing Voice. I think it was yesterday, and they were saying that Angelo Leo would probably do the same thing to Stephen Fulton. Nah, he wouldn't. Trust me, he wouldn't. But it gives Angelo Leo a little bit more time to you know to prepare for such a fight. That's all. But congratulations to Angelo Leo on that successfully winning that fight. The scorecards were a little bit wide. I think that Tremaine Williams did actually win at least I think the first two rounds. I don't know if I give him the third, but the first two rounds definitely. And again, you can't just be looking at headshots. Remember, guys be invested into the body, and you got to pay attention to how many times, especially when guys get into clinches. Excuse me. Especially when guys get into clinches, you gotta pay attention to what um is actually happening there. Um, I didn't get to watch it. Egerton, they were saying he was robbed. I don't know. I have to actually go and look at that fight. But Angela Leo just broke Jermaine Williams down. In fact, in the later rounds, Angela Leo was just landing body shot after body shot. That dude took a lot of body shots down the stretch. But he hung in there and he was able to make it to the final bell. Angelo Lee definitely dominating him in the final minutes of the fight. Again, Angelo reminds me a little bit of Batter Jack style. Um, he's got some tricky things he does though with his lead right hand and with his jab and so on. So he's a good fighter. I think he's only going to get better as a world champion for however long that lasts, because he's going to have the confidence. Excuse me. So there's a bunch of other topics I want to talk about, and I'm trying to run through each one of them. The first one is this little spiel that was going on between Gary Russell Jr. and Terrence Crawford. And Errol Spence had something to say about it today. And he was saying, we all on the same team, we all underdogs. So let's not try to lose focus on that. I think that's a good thing to say. And surprising that Terrence Crawford's basically prospective opponent would say something like that. But in terms of the scheme of things, Gary Russell Jr. started barking at Terrence Crawford and talking about, people who were there could be witness to it. And he brought in certain names and called certain people, so that Carl Duggan and Mark Davis, they gave the account of what happened then. And it resulted in big upheaval by Garros. Garros was angry when they finished saying that basically Garros did not break Terence Crawford's jaw, but he sucker punched him. And then Terence Crawford, in order for him not to retaliate, they held him down, and then I think either Mark Davis or Carl Dogden talked about how Terence Crawford had some other offense against him, and just being in this melee, they just escorted him home. Terence Crawford had a different take on it, where he was saying that, they probably escorted him home because he would have beaten up, Gary Russell Jr. And Gary Russell was offering to go up to 147 to face Terence Crawford, which is very funny. But I think that in the end, I don't think being professionals, and Gary Russell Jr. bringing the incident up anyway, I think being professionals, sometimes something's just best not said. Gary Russell didn't have to mention Terence Crawford. Gary Russell didn't have to say he was going to call out Terence Crawford and try and get a fight with him 147. That's just doesn't make no sense. I mean, you're a 120 what? You're a 126 pounder trying to mess, well, at least a guy that fights at 126, even if you were 140 something, you're trying to mess with a 147 pounder who probably walks around 160 plus, right? Yeah, that's just, I mean, yeah, weight doesn't play a role when you have not only superior boxing IQ, or you may have, but superior smarts to another guy. But with a guy like Terence Crawford, though he does get hit, I was just watching one of his earlier fights, in his 14th fight, where he stopped the guy, 6-rounder. Terence Crawford gets hit. Terence Crawford's more of a dog. He's a strategist. He can be strategical, but he's more of a dog. He likes banging it out. Okay. And so he would get hit by Gary Russell Jr., but the fact that Gary Russell Jr. sucker punched him and it didn't even phase Terence, that's not a good thing. Like Gary Russell Jr. going into a fight with 8-ounce gloves against a guy that outweighs you by maybe as much on the fight night as 20 pounds, that's not a good look for you. Like, you could get really badly hurt and your career could end, And Gary Russell, he has fast hands. He has decent defense. But a guy like Terence Crawford, who's a switch hitter, and your southpaw style is not going to do nothing for him. I mean, he just walk right through you, But I thought that, Errol handled the situation really nicely. Now Mike Tyson's been just up to today. He, did another ad where he was saying, I'm coming for you, and they're trying to invoke fear or something like that. That don't work with Roy. I will never work with Roy. The fact that Roy signed on the dotted line that he wants to face Mike Tyson, he's not afraid of Mike Tyson, obviously. He's not afraid of him. He knows what the dangers are, but he's not guys like Roy, they will never be afraid of guys. See, I was talking about Tank versus Leo Santa Cruz, and I was saying to people that, Leo Santa Cruz is not even in any sort of way, shape, or form going to just fade under Tank's attack. Tank's been facing, opposition that has been, once top tier, like Yurkus Gamboa was once top tier, like his last set of opponents, were once top tier. The guy that he faced that was top tier was a Puerto Rican guy, and he was able to stop him, but it still took 7 rounds. This Santa Cruz is not once top tier; he is top tier. So I heard Tank's 135 belt will be on the line, and Leo Santa Cruz's 130 belt will be on the line. They're not, both of them not real belts, but anyway. The thing about it is, Tank's gonna have to go down to 130 to face Leo Santa Cruz, and Leo Santa Cruz is not going to lay down. Leo Santa Cruz is not going to lay down, okay? And he's going to be smart about it, even though he's not as skilled as Tank. And that leads to another question. But first, let me handle this Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr. Roy Jones Jr. has been world champion in 4 different divisions. Okay, the man has experience galore. He's been a longer world champion than Mike Tyson. He's beaten more world champions than Mike Tyson. He's beaten more Hall of Famers than Mike Tyson. He's done it all. When you talk about pound for pound, you talk about Roy Jones Jr. He's been pound for pound king more times than Mike Tyson. He may have injuries now that restrict his movement, but smarts is something you can't pay for. I'm not talking about ring IQ now. I'm not talking about intelligence. I'm not talking about knowledge base. I'm talking about smarts, the ability to use your knowledge to your advantage in any situation, not just in the ring, but in life in general. And while Roy used to play King of the Hill, and Roy will be playing King of the Hill somewhat, still here, where Mike Tyson called him out, he answered the call. I want people to understand, no matter how much Roy is going to have an answer for Mike Tyson. Okay? Roy is not going in that ring if he didn't feel he was capable of beating Mike Tyson. Beating him, not going in there and surviving. Roy doesn't do that. Okay? So, can Mike Tyson possibly knock out Roy? Absolutely, he could. Can Roy possibly hurt Mike Tyson and win a decision? Absolutely, he could. My thing, though, is intimidation. That ain't going to work with Roy. You're not going to intimidate Roy. Roy's never going to be intimidated. You just don't have that gene in him. Maybe that might work to his disadvantage, but he's not going in there to lay down. He's not going in there going to be afraid of Mike Tyson's power. This is an elite athlete. His knees may not be the greatest in the world, but he can still move around, and his movement is going to give Mike Tyson problems. Okay, and people always feel you have to excessively move around the ring and precise footwork, ladies and gentlemen. Learn what that is. Learn what it is. Coach Eric Bradley is actually doing a seminar on footwork, and he was doing footwork drills. And when you understand certain things about where you need to be in space, it makes perfect sense why Roy has some of the tools to be able to negate Mike Tyson's really incredible attacks off center line. Because Mike Tyson, just using a jab on Mike Tyson mightn't work because he's going to be off center line. He's going to be coming at Roy off center line. But the things Roy can do to Mike Tyson, using his lead hand, which will offset Mike Tyson. I don't care how strong he is. It's going to offset him. It's going to throw off his rhythm. And Roy already has a rhythm that's irregular. And Roy's going to be motivated for this fight because this is a fight he wanted. This is a Mike Tyson fight. So he's going to be motivated for it. So a lot of people are thinking that, people just think that Mike Tyson's going to run through Roy. I don't see that happening. But I do see an exciting fight. Roy will be the smaller guy in there in terms of size. But the thing about it is, if you try to run away from trouble, Tyson Fury gave the recipe with Deontay Wilder. If you try to run away from trouble, that's when you're going to get in trouble. If the trouble's coming at you, full velocity, full speed, you need to close the gap on it, or you need to be at a range where it nullifies that. It's not to run away from it. It's to get into a range or place where you can control it. So once you can control that aggression that's coming, when you have a highly aggressive opponent, there's certain things you do to control a highly aggressive opponent. And there's certain places you can target on a highly aggressive opponent. So I'll give you one example. Mike Tyson is barreling in on changes levels and jabs Mike Tyson to the pit. You're going to run right into a jab, or you're going to run right into a shotgun jab. Okay? If you jab him to the pit, you ram all your weight in, you jab him to the pit, he can't avoid that jab. He can't get out of the way of that jab. That's a jab that you can't get away from. He can bob and weave how much the fuck he wants to bob and weave. If you change levels and ram that jab into his body, the only way Mike Tyson getting away from that jab is to stop moving forward, which he's not going to do. So he'll run right into the jab. Boom. Okay? So the jab to the pit is going to be a lovely little tool that Roy could use to start to control Mike Tyson. Now, boxers like Floyd Mayweather, boxers like Lomachenko, boxers like Tyson Fury, boxers like Andre Ward, boxers like Canelo, they body check you and they head control you. If I don't want you throwing a punch to hit me that's unnecessary, I'm going to control you. Either head control you, body control you. Now, the way Roy does it, he doesn't really for that. But there's a reason why a number of opponents don't ever hit back Floyd. It's because he uses the lead hand to head control, or he uses his forearm to body check an opponent and get him out of position while he's pivoting around them. So he keeps their hands home. Because if you keep your opponent's hands home and they occupy them, as they say, when you're occupying your opponent, they're not throwing no punch. So they can't throw back at you. So you can occupy them, you can head control them, you can body check them, and that's how you keep them from throwing back punches. Because a human being, and just the way how they're made, they're made to balance a certain way. So he body checked Manny Pacquiao. Pacquiao got very, very fast hands. He had to body check Pacquiao, throw Pacquiao off balance, several different ways, which kept Pacquiao from throwing his combinations at him. Shout out to Adil Raja. I don't think this is going to live up to the hype, but Tyson versus Roy Jones is a must-see TV. Absolutely. You got to, let me put it in perspective like this, okay? They're not 20-something years old anymore, so don't expect that kind of performance from them. But what you're going to see is a lot more experience come to the fore. And people don't give Tyson the credit that he's very smart, and he's got a high IQ. So, and he's a well-researched boxer. Mike Tyson's going to try all kinds of little tricky things to close the distance on Roy. And Roy, already got that vast knowledge of boxing. And he's going to employ different strategies and different tactics. And the thing with Roy that makes him so unique is his rhythm. His rhythm's different. Now, Roy has been knocked out a number of times. Ever been knocked out, it's because he's been stationary. He was trying to go into a defensive posture, and he wasn't properly protecting himself. He was trying to use the two guard, and usually was up against the ropes or something, and that's how he get knocked the starch out. Shout out to Michael Peshwari. He said, "Stop lying to the fans, man." I don't know what the fuck that means. Hold on a second. And then he says, "You're a hater," which makes no sense. I don't know sometimes why these fans even come on this channel, because none of this makes any sense. I don't know. He probably a fan of Tyson or something. Anyway, so Roy's been knocked out a number of times, mostly because Roy would freeze up, or the boxer would freeze up Roy, so he would close up his guard or whatever, and then he gets knocked the starch out. You know what I mean? But Roy Jones Jr., again, is a fighter who has a lot of experience, and I would not be surprised if this fight goes the distance. I will not be surprised at all. Because, one, as I said before, Mike Tyson is now picking back up boxing. And to get back into groove after being so rusty, so many years outside of the ring, it's not going to be easy for him. And then when he gets into the ring with a guy with that kind of weird rhythm, Roy has sort of, I don't know how to explain it. Best way to say it is, I call it the fat boy rhythm. I call it the duck rhythm. It's where he's moving with these small pivoting while he's moving. And that's something that Pacquiao and Mayweather have, these small duck steps. And, that's what Roy's got this irregular rhythm where he throws punches just out of the clear blue sky, it seems almost, because he doesn't telegraph any of his punches. So those sort of things are going to be, it's going to be a challenge for Mike Tyson in a lot of ways. And a lot of people just don't realize, well, a lot of y'all don't even know shit about boxing, so it's not really surprising. But in many different ways, Mike Tyson going to have different challenges. Now, I was listening to some people talk about how, Mike Tyson, and they're comparing Mike Tyson to guys, that he faced at the end of his career. Um, and how Mike Tyson is not going to be any good or whatever. Listen. You cannot judge Mike Tyson on the end of his career because he was boxing nonstop. Right now, he hasn't boxed in a while, so he's refreshed. He's very much rested. His body's very much rested, and he's in a good place as well. And he's training now because he wants to train. All right. Before that, he was fed up with boxing and all that. So you can't really look at him based on his last couple of fights of his career. You have to look at him from a fresh slate. Um, and he is training. Don't get me wrong. He's training. He's serious about it, which is great. And I heard there's no headgear for that fight, so that's also good. But as I was saying before, um, he's gonna come in a bit rusty. Okay, he's gonna come in a bit rusty, and expect that. Expect that he's not gonna be 100% fire in all cylinders. And he's 54 years old. He's not no young puppy. Okay, we're talking about 54-year-old fighting a 51-year-old. They're not so much far away from my age, and I'm sure they're probably fitter than I am. So it's gonna be good. Don't get me wrong, but don't expect it to be some 20-year-old against a 20-year-old. That's not gonna happen. I don't care how he looks. It's not gonna be the same. Okay, and when they start hitting one another, they're gonna react differently as well because they're not the same. All right. If I get an injury at 45 years old, which I am, it's not going to be the same as if I got an injury when I was 20 something years old. It's just what it is. All right. So I don't care if you have gene therapy. It doesn't really matter. Okay. But I would say that it's a good little fight that we're gonna get. We're gonna get some entertainment. I'm definitely gonna get it. Um, Talking about some of the upcoming fights other than that. See, we have here. Um, I didn't get to watch the rest of the fights, so I'm gonna check. I'm gonna head you guys up when I get to those rest of the fights. Um, Anthony Joshua, I already talked about this. Yeah, you did. Okay. Adrian Broner. Adrian Broner's talking about going down to 135, 140, and that he can kick ass at 140 or 135. And let me preface this by saying that um, the great Aaron Pryor. Actually, I saw somewhere. I think it was in Wikipedia, maybe. I heard that the great Aaron Pryor actually no, it wasn't Wikipedia. It was some article. The great Aaron Pryor actually helped to train Adrian Broner. People don't know that. I didn't even know that. That he was mentoring some young kids in Ohio, Cincinnati, Ohio. I think he's from Cincinnati. And Adrian Broner, of course, comes from Ohio. And so I did not know that. I didn't know that young Adrian Broner actually had some mentorship from Aaron Pryor. What can I say about Adrian Broner? Adrian Broner's statement is not something that I take lightly. Adrian Broner, I don't take lightly, actually. I always thought of Adrian Broner as the laughing assassin. That Adrian Broner jokes around, he laughs, he's very funny and comical, but in the ring, he's really a savage. Now, the thing about it is, we really haven't seen like Adrian Broner really throw hands a lot. Um, the way how Adrian Broner fights is a little bit different to how most boxers fight. He's gonna assess, accumulate information on you, use his defense. When he's figured you out, then he starts to just beat your ass down. He comes walking you down, and he will put the pressure on you and beat your ass down. That's Adrian Broner. Um, but we haven't really seen that from him in a good while. He usually was more defensive, especially against Pacquiao very recently. He's gotten a lot of the big fights that he wanted. The Pacquiao fight, the Sean Porter fight, Marcus McDonough fight. He's even fought um, Mikey Garcia. He's even fought Mikey Garcia. That's four big, big fights he's been in. One of them being a pay-per-view fight. So Adrian Broner's had some really big fights. Now he has not won any of those big fights, but he's been in them and he's handled himself pretty much. Even though he's getting shut out or whatever, he's not getting hurt. He leaves the fight fine. Now, let me tell you why I take this seriously. Adrian Broner at 140, 135. Let me tell you why I take him seriously. Adrian Broner is still sorting himself out. He's still young. What is he, 28, 26? Something like that. He's still young. 28, probably 28 years old. He's not even 30. Adrian Broner still has the opportunity. His name's big. He's fought big opponents. He's lost the fights, but he's still a name, and he's fought big opponents. Adrian Broner is a guy who is trying to resolve his story. He's trying to find himself. He got a lot of fame all of a sudden. He mastered social media in terms of provoking responses. But I have a feeling that he's going to now transition into another stage of his life and career. You can't say that Adrian Broner ducked or dodged anybody in boxing. Look at his resume. He never ducked or dodged nobody. You cannot say that Adrian Broner is afraid to fight anyone. What a lot of people go at is, Adrian Broner, he's nobody. They start trunching him down. He's nobody. He can't do nothing, whatever. Listen, you can't have it both ways. You say you want fights that you want to see. Well, Adrian Broner gave you fights that you wanted to see. He fought the big fights. The problem was Adrian Broner was preoccupied with entertaining you so much that he still didn't focus and wasn't dedicated enough to the boxing. But Adrian Broner is training all of now. Adrian Broner is doing his thing and getting himself in shape, and he's working in the background. Now, here's my thing. My thing is, Adrian Broner can make it down to 135 pounds if he wanted to. Okay? And we saw him training, and we saw how small he got. He can also make 140 and fight there. I personally think that he would be a threat to any of the current 135 pounders or the 140 pounders. He would be a threat. No doubt about it. Because he'd been banging with the big welterweights. He'd been banging with big welterweights. Sean Porter's a big welterweight, right? Oh, he also faced Jesse Vargas. He fought to a draw, right? I thought Vargas took that fight, but nonetheless. So he has been fighting the bigger welterweights. He beat Paulie Malignaggi, who was, but nonetheless, he beat Paulie Malignaggi. And he actually won a welterweight title. All right? He won a welterweight title. Now, Adrian Broner has a lot still to offer to boxing. I'm not talking about entertainment-wise. I'm talking about boxing-wise. And I know he's incredibly smart because no fool would be able to do what he did and command so much attention in social media. So my thing is this. He is in a position where he can still do great things with his career. Amazingly. And it's going to be up to him because he has a set of fighters under him still. It's going to be up to him how he charts that pathway. And I just think that I believe that he's going to make the right choices in the end, and he's going to have a career. Even though he would have lost to a lot of big names, you know what's the funny thing about it? The funny thing about it, in my opinion, is that a lot of people talk about the old time greats and how they lost fights, but yet they did great things. Now, Roberto Duran has how many losses? Like seven, eight, nine losses. Of course, people thought Duran was done a couple times over, and then he'd come back with a great fight. The thing about it, anyway, is Duran is seen as one of the best all time greats, somewhere in the top five, top 10. And my point being this: Adrian Broner can still do that with his career. It's no doubt he loves boxing. We could see that. And he's very much attuned, and he's very much knowledgeable on the sport. And he would make a great commentator. But he's also a great entertainer. I have no doubt about it. I think Adrian Broner, if he goes down to 140 or he goes down to 135 and he takes on um, good to great opposition, I think he'd prevail in those two weight classes. 147 hasn't done so great, right? But we'll see what happens with Adrian Broner because his story is not over. Let's see. We're gonna see what happens to this cat. Got some different people on here. Adil Raja says, "You think size difference will be an issue?" G. No. Roy versus Tyson? No. At this level, size is. Roy proved already that size is not an issue. He faced John Ruiz, and he was able to overcome the size advantage. The thing with Roy is he's going to have to just get Tyson's attention. The key here is to get his attention. And the way how you deal with an older fighter is you go to the body. Mike Tyson will be going to Roy's body if he gets a chance. Roy's going to have to go to Tyson's body early. And since Tyson's going to be a very aggressive fighter, the way to slow down a very aggressive fighter is to jab him to the body. That jab to the pit is going to be very useful. And once he gets that jab into the pit, he can mix it up. That's how he's going to have to stop Mike Tyson. That's the only way you're going to stop a guy like that coming at you like a freight train. You got to give him something. You got to give him something that makes him second guess or at least slows him down, you know. Stab to the pit. So, let's see what else we got here. Adil Raja says, Roy is another one like Tyson. Yeah, freakish talent in his day, different level. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Roy Jones Jr. is a special breed of fighter. He used to play King of the Hill. Mike Tyson is a special breed of fighter. Explosive. Slips punches, comes back with punches, right? Tyson himself had a beautiful jab. He jabbed off an angle off of your jab. But the thing that got Tyson, see, the thing that Tyson had over other fighters was intimidation. So if he could intimidate you and get you on your bicycle, you're in trouble. But we've seen some guys stand up to Mike Tyson. I think who was it? It was a unanimous decision win, and Tyson still dropped him. But I'm trying to remember the guy's name. Was it James Tillis? It was one of them that stood up to Mike Tyson and fought him, and did some good inside work actually. Fight went the distance. I can't remember who it was. I think it was James Tillis. But Mike Tyson is a hell of a fighter, you know, and he's explosive, but I think people underestimate his boxing IQ and his smarts. And Mike Tyson tried to get the mental war inside of a boxer's mind. So that's what he used to use, was his intimidation. And of course, the fans lap it up, and fans are very enthusiastic about it. And I would love to see how this fight pans out, or how the promotion for the fight pans out. But so far, I'm loving every second of it, because I'm as nostalgic as all you Tyson fans out there and all you fans out there. Michael Peshwari says, Adil, you've been exposed as a fraud, unbiased. Okay. So going on to sometimes we just ignore the people who have baseless comments and just want to just talk. We have some upcoming fights that I want to talk to you guys about. Devin Haney was saying that he doesn't mind having a fight with Vasily Lomachenko, which is cool. But I do think that Teofimo Lopez is going to get first shot at Vasily Lomachenko. Okay, what I think about that fight? It's a good fight. It's a good fight, and we're going to see what Teofimo has that he could bring to the table, because he's very confident about beating Lomachenko, which is interesting. I mean, he does have youth on his side. He does have um, star power on his side. He does have skills. Okay, even though the Japanese kid kind of showed up some of his skills, I don't think that's going to be a problem for the Lomachenko fight. But he does have skills. He has ability, he has footwork, that kind of thing. So it's going to be interesting how that pans out. Let's talk about some upcoming fights. But first, let me talk some peripheral nonsense. So Manny Pacquiao. We've been hearing rumors about Manny Pacquiao versus Terrence Crawford. We've been hearing rumors about Manny Pacquiao versus Mikey Garcia. We've been hearing rumors about Manny Pacquiao versus Triple G. Right? I know I talked about this in the stream with my guest the last session yesterday. But which one of these sounds most realistic? Do you think it's going to be Pacquiao versus Mikey Garcia? That sounds more realistic, like everybody's been saying. Do you think it's somebody else that Manny Pacquiao might be facing? Then we can look at the subject of Canelo. We're hearing now that it's between Callum Smith and Demetrius Andrade, who may be possible opponents of Canelo. How many of you guys actually believe that to be true or not? I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. You can answer any one of the questions. We also heard about Kell Brook, wishing to have a fight with Terrence Crawford. And, that's interesting, because, Kell Brook was training at the time, and he was calling out Terrence Crawford. That's also interesting. And by the way, Evander Holyfield's still training for a fight. He's not saying who the opponent is. I saw it on Dr. Boo Hightower, the chiropractor he went to. I'm looking forward to seeing who Evander Holyfield will also face next, which is going to be interesting. I think he's going to probably be doing it, the exhibition through Mike Tyson's probably Legends Only League. So who do you guys think you think Terrence Crawford might face next? Is it going to be Manny Pacquiao? Is it going to be Kell Brook? It's going to be some other fighter. Then Paulie Malignaggi had said some very controversial things, and he's been fired from Showtime. So I'm trying to catch up with everything, because I didn't get to talk about it on the stream. Paulie Malignaggi's statements. What do you guys think about Paulie Malignaggi's statements and the fact that he got fired from Showtime for those statements? My personal opinion of it is, bearing in mind and looking cumulatively at everything that Paulie Malignaggi said, and the fact that a lot of social media outlets covered it as well as gave their take on it, he was asked to apologize for a specific thing that had to do with what he said about European fighters, and why Devin Haney It was going on dangerous ground, as I paraphrase it. I would say this: they wanted him to apologize for it. Devin Haney had apologized for his statement, and would Paulie Malignaggi have apologized for his statement? Now, given Malignaggi said several things, not just on that, but also on the Black Lives Matter campaign, the George Floyd incident. He said several things on that were very controversial. And it looked like he was not willing to apologize for any of them. Now, my thing is, and I saw Abner Maris on the Showtime card as well, for the card Angelo Leo versus Tremaine Williams. I think that by and large, Paulie Malignaggi is entitled to his opinion on whatever he wants to say, but some of the things he said were just downright ignorant and racist. This is my personal opinion on it. And I'm surprised that Showtime allowed him to get away with those statements for so long. So it wasn't surprising to me that because he did not apologize, and we don't know what happened or transpired within closed doors, and even if this is even related to his statements, this is what is being published. But what I can say is that somebody saying something like that and being able to look at it in the context of other things that this person has said, I think he did deserve to give an apology for those things. And as such, if he got fired for that, well, that's the consequence of not apologizing for such things. You know, I was talking about I wanted to talk about upcoming fights, so I'm going to talk a couple of these upcoming fights here. So over the weekend, I didn't get to see Sam Egerton versus, I can't remember his opponent right now. But what I would say is that I'm looking forward to the following fights that are going to transpire next weekend, August the 7th. Terry Harper versus Natasha Jones. That's going to be a DAZN card. That's on the 17th of August. These young fighters are going to fight. I believe it's for an interim championship, so that should be a good thing. Cecilia Brackett, who's the long reigning welterweight world women's champion, she'll be taking on Jessica McCaskill, who's moving up from 140 to 147, and that will be on the 15th of this month. Dillian White's going to face Alexander Povetkin on the 22nd of this month, along with Jorge Linares facing Javier Fortuna. I saw Javier Fortuna put out some statements concerning Devin Haney and talking about how Devin Haney was running from him. So that's also an interesting thing. You guys can always check that out. But I think it was on Fight Hype was one of them. So Jorge Linares will be facing Javier Fortuna on the 22nd of August. And you guys can tell me your picks for those fights. We also have Jose Ramirez facing Victor Postol. That'll be on the 29th. Katie Taylor on the same day, the 22nd, that is, with Jorge Linares and Javier Fortuna. Katie Taylor will be taking on Delphine Persoon in their rematch. And I think that's going to be at lightweight, actually. So I think their first fight was at super featherweight. So they're going to have a rematch instead of Amanda Serrano versus Katie Taylor. So Amanda Serrano is possibly not going to be the person that's going to be facing Katie Taylor. It'll be now Delphine Persoon. On the 26th of August, Jeff Horn's going to be facing Tim Tszyu. And I heard Jeff Horn speaking about facing the Charlo brothers. The older Charlo, the winner of Jamel Charlo and Jason Rosaro. I think it's Rosaro. That is interesting. Jeff Horn trying to gun for that. So, but the first thing you got to get past is Tim Tszyu. They're talking about how he's a prima donna. He doesn't want to be in the same hotel. Excuse me. Blah, 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 blah. My personal opinion is Let him get past Tim Zoo, who looks like his father in fighting. And if he can get past Tim Zoo, sure. Absolutely. In the month of September, we're looking at matchups. The Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr. is happening September 2nd. Erickson Lubin versus Terrell Gosha. That's a good matchup right there. Terrell Gosha, some people argue, beat Austin Trout. Then we have Jamal Charlo facing Sergey Derevyanchenko. That will be on the 26th of September, along with Jamel Charlo versus Jason Rosaro, who we don't know how that fight is going to go, and that's going to be fantastic. Then you got Daniel Duval versus Joe Joyce on the 24th of October. And on that same day, Gervonta Tank Davis will be facing Leo Santa Cruz. And then we also have a date to be announced now. Inui facing John Rael Casimiro. That should be a great cracker for everybody as well. So these are the upcoming fights. What are you guys' picks? Give me your picks for who you think would win these fights. Let's start seeing how you guys would pick your winners. Let's talk a couple other things. I also transpired in boxing. And then we'll wrap it up for tonight. Almost an hour session. Let's see what you guys have been saying in the comment section. Just because I've been sleepy for the longest while. I'm not gonna lie to you. I've been sleepy. Okay. Not anybody saying anything. Yeah. So, some other news that I thought was very interesting was looking at the young fighters watching at the older fighters. Emiki Bay was saying a couple things about passing down knowledge. We had, it's not Octavius is his name. I don't know if it's Octavius, but the youngster who was training in the camp and is going to get some work, some sparring with one of the other younger boxers in the sport. I'm trying to remember how it goes. But yeah, if I remember, I just blanked out on a lot of things right there. This is all I got for now. I think I wanted to say more, but I just kind of blanked out a bit. There's a bunch of topics still left to talk about, but I just wanted to get through with what I had to say for now. We still got to pull out a judge and find out how that judge scores boxing matches. I was looking at WBC, and Coach Eric Bradley was talking about how do you rank fighters in your organization. And it was interesting how the WBC president, Mr. Suleiman, how he responded about that. You guys can always check it out. It's on Coach Eric Bradley's master. On that note, I think that's about it for me. You can check out the polls that I'll put out there. I'm not going to be able to do much streaming until the 15th of August. So it's mostly live feed here, unfortunately. But for you guys out there, if there's anything else or any topic else you want me to talk about, let me know. I am what you need. You've been watching my channel. Peace.